The world had ended 100 years ago. Cities lay in ashes, oceans were silent, and the sky burned with a pale red glow that never faded. Humanity had turned to dust, leaving behind ruins of steel and broken faith. From beneath those ruins, something ancient awoke, a heartbeat older than the sun. Deep within a buried fortress known as the Crimson Keep, eyes opened one by one. Pale, glowing, and hungry. 55 in total. The House of Crimson had risen once more. Their leader, Lady Selene, stood at the center of the awakening chamber, her skin white as snow, her hair black as the void. Around her, her children, her blood and her curse stirred from slumber. "It is time," she whispered, her voice echoing like wine through a graveyard. The vampires opened their eyes to the dawn that never ended, a world without life, waiting for its kings and queens of death to return. They walked through their ruined halls, once filled with music, now coated in dust. Portraits of their ancestors hung cracked and faded, their painted eyes watching the living ghosts below. Lord Kale, Selene's eldest son, moved beside her, his crimson cloak trailing across the floor. "Mother," he said quietly, "why awaken now? There is nothing left to rule." Selene's gaze turned toward the distant horizon through a shattered window. "That is why we rise," she said. "The silence calls us, and silence is never empty." Her words chilled even her children, for they knew what her silence meant: hunger, prophecy, and war. She touched the window frame, where blood once ran down from her first rebirth. "The world is dying," she murmured, "and the dead must decide whether to let it die completely." Outside, the wind carried whispers, not human, not animal, but something older. The vampires stepped out into the ruins of the old world. The ground was cracked like broken glass, rivers had turned black, and the air smelled of rust and old blood. The youngest of the house, a girl named Leora, walked close to her brother. She had been turned only a century ago, her soul still trembling beneath the weight of immortality. "It's so quiet," she whispered. Her brother smiled bitterly. "You'll get used to it." But she shook her head. "No, I hear something." Selene stopped walking, her eyes narrowing. Then they all heard a faint heartbeat far in the distance. Impossible. Humanity was extinct, or so they believed. But the sound grew louder, steadier, and more real. "A survivor," Kale said. "Or bait," Selene replied. "Either way, we hunt." The 55 spread across the land like shadows. They moved faster than wind, silent as falling ash. Each one felt the pull of the heartbeat guiding them through the ruins. They passed collapsed towers, broken bridges, and skeletal remains of machines that once ruled the skies. When they reached the center of the old world, a massive crater filled with red mist stopped. There, kneeling in the dust, was a child. Humans, breathing, alive. Selene's eyes widened for the first time in centuries. "Impossible," she whispered. The child lifted his head slowly. His eyes were silver, not human at all. And on his wrist burned a mark shaped like a crimson moon. The youngest of the house gasped. "Mother, that marks..." Selene's voice broke the silence. "He carries our blood." The 55 froze. The child spoke softly, his voice echoing in their minds. "I was born from your curse." Selene stepped forward, her pale hand trembling for the first time in ages. "Who are you?" she asked. The child tilted his head, tears glimmering in his eyes. "I am the end you created." And before they could move, the red sky pulsed a heartbeat from the heavens. The earth trembled and black light spread from the child's body, sweeping across the ruins. Vampires screamed as the light touched them, not with pain, but with memory. For within that light they saw the truth. Every human they had ever taken, every soul they had consumed, was returning. The air filled with whispers of the voices of the dead. Lady Selene fell to her knees, her perfect calm shattering. "It begins," she whispered. Above them, the red sun flickered for the first time in a century, as if trying to remember what dawn was. The Crimson Keep burned with red firelight. The 55 had returned to their throne room, a vast hall of black stone and broken glass. At its center, a great table stretched across the room, carved from the bones of ancient beasts. For the first time in centuries, the family gathered for the blood feast. Candles flickered like dying stars, and the scent of iron filled the air. The child with silver eyes sat at the far end, silent and still. Selene sat upon the throne of obsidian, her gaze heavy upon him. Around her, her children whispered. "He is no human," said one. "He carries our curse," said another. Kale, her eldest, leaned close. "Mother, we should destroy him before he destroys us." But Selene shook her head. "No. The blood calls to him. He is bound to us or we to him." The hall trembled as she spoke. The crimson torches dimmed as if the keep itself was listening. When the blood feast began, goblets were filled with what little human blood remained in their stores, a treasure kept since the extinction. Each vampire raised their cup to the memory of the old world. "To eternity," they whispered. But as Selene lifted her chalice, she stopped. The liquid inside began to glow faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Gasps echoed through the hall. The child stood. "You drink what no longer lives," he said softly, "but the dead do not rest." His eyes turned bright silver. The blood in their cups shivered, then rose into the air like smoke. The vampires stepped back, their hunger clashing with fear. Selene's voice was steady, but her hand trembled. "What are you?" she asked again. The child looked at her, and his voice seemed older than time. "I am your blood-given memory." Kale's temper broke first. "Enough of this," he roared, drawing his blade, a black sword forged from his own shadow. He lunged toward the child, but before he could strike, the floor erupted with red mist. Kale froze mid-step, his body trembling. The mist crawled up his arms and turned his skin to ash. The vampires cried out as Kale fell, his sword clattering to the floor. The child didn't move. "You would kill what was born to free you," he said. Selene knelt beside her son's ashes, her face pale with fury. "You call this freedom?" she hissed. "You destroy my blood and speak of mercy?" The child's silver eyes softened. "Not a mercy balance." Selene rose slowly, her black gown dragging across the ashes. "Then you will learn what balance costs." The feast turned to chaos. The vampires' hunger boiled over, and their forms shifted, fangs gleaming, eyes glowing red as they fell into madness. The child stood unmoving, his power bleeding through the air. One by one the torches died. Selene spread her arms, and a storm of black wings erupted behind her in her true form, the Queen of Shadows. "Enough." Her voice shook the keep. Silence fell. The 54 vampires knelt, trembling in fear. Only the child stood tall. "You were gods once," he said quietly, "but gods who forgot what they were meant to protect." Selene's expression darkened. "And what would you have us protect, child?" He looked around the hall, his eyes sad. "What remains of your own souls?" For a moment, the room felt alive again, like the ghosts of the past were breathing among them. Then the ground shuddered. A low rumble rose from beneath the keep. The vampires turned as cracks split the stone floor. From below, a faint red light seeped upward. Selene's eyes widened. "No," she whispered. "Not that seal." The child stepped back, confused. "What is it?" Selene's voice trembled. "The heart of the house. The source of our immortality. If it awakens now," she didn't finish. The walls began to bleed. The heart, a vast, living crystal beneath the keep, had stirred for the first time in centuries. The red glow spread, and the voices of the dead whispered through the air again, louder, closer. The child clutched his chest, pained. "It's calling me," he gasped. Selene's gaze hardened. "Then you will answer it." The torches flared to life once more, casting wild shadows on the walls. The House of 55 stood at the edge of something far greater than hunger or curse, a reckoning older than blood itself. Selene raised her hand, her black nails gleaming. "Gather the family," she commanded. "The feast is over. The war begins." The night was no longer safe even for vampires. Far beyond the Crimson Keep, the world had begun to stir. Fires burned in the distance, reaching toward the endless red sky. From the ruins of fallen cities, a new enemy rose, not human, not vampire, but something in between. They called themselves the Dawnborn, survivors who carried traces of the ancient bloodline. They were born from experiments, created by humans who had once captured vampires and mixed their essence with mortal blood. The result: creatures who could walk beneath the red sun, feed without thirst, and kill without fear. At their head stood Arden Vale, a man with silver veins and eyes that gleamed like moonlight. "The House of Crimson has ruled for too long," he said to his followers. "Tonight the sky burns for us." Behind him, an army of thousands lifted their weapons. The dawn had begun again, not of life, but of vengeance. Inside the Crimson Keep, Celine watched from her high tower. The horizon flickered orange, a rare and deadly color in their eternal dusk. "They are coming," she whispered. Her second-born, Lady Naira, stepped forward. "Humans?" she asked. Celine shook her head. "No, not humans. Not yet." She turned to the council, a circle of 12 elders from the house. "The old war returns," she said. "But this time they carry our blood." A low murmur rippled through the chamber. Kale's ashes still lay untouched near the throne, a silent warning. "Shall we destroy them, Mother?" Naira asked, her red eyes glowing. Celine's lips curved slightly. "We will welcome them first, and then we shall see who bleeds." Her words carried both elegance and terror. The family bowed, their faces pale with anticipation. At dawn, though the sun was little more than a dim ember, the Dawnborn army reached the valley below the keep. The air trembled with energy as red lightning cracked across the sky. Arden stood before his army, looking up at the ancient fortress. 55 monsters, he muttered. "Let us see if they still remember what fear tastes like." He lifted his sword, its blade made of crystallized blood, and drove it into the ground. The earth shuddered. From the shadows, the vampires emerged, not one by one, but all at once. 54 figures, dressed in black, their eyes glowing crimson. Celine appeared last, descending from the tower like a living shadow. "You carry our scent," she said, her voice echoing across the battlefield. "Half of what we are and none of what we were." Arden smirked. "Then perhaps we are the better half." The battle began without warning. The sky split open, raining ash and flame. The vampires moved like storm winds, claws slicing through air, shadows striking faster than light. The Dawnborn fought with fire and blood, their weapons pulsing with strange power. When vampire blood spilled, the earth drank it eagerly, turning the ground black. Leora, the youngest of the house, stood on the tower's edge, frozen in horror. "They are killing each other," she whispered. Celine appeared beside her. "That is what families do, child." Leora turned to her, trembling. "But they are part of us." Celine's expression didn't change. So were the humans once. Below, the battlefield glowed like a red ocean. Blood, light, and ruin mingled into one. The air itself screamed. And above it all, the child with silver eyes watched in silence from the shadows. By nightfall, the valley was covered in smoke and bodies. The Dawnborn had fallen by the hundreds, yet so had many of Celine's kin. The once proud number of 55 was now 43. The survivors gathered in silence, their clothes torn, their hands stained with their own blood. Celine stood over the remains of her children, her face unreadable. "They will come again," Naira said quietly. "And next time they will not be alone." Celine nodded. "The blood calls others. It always does." She looked at the child, the one with silver eyes, who had watched the battle without a word. "You knew they would come," she said softly. The child's voice was faint. "I did." "Why?" she asked. His gaze met hers. "Because they were born to end us." The sky burned brighter than ever that night, not with light, but with blood. As the wind carried the stench of death, Selene walked among her fallen children and whispered their names one by one. "You will rise again," she murmured. "We always do." She turned to the child and knelt before him. "If the end is written in your blood," she said, "then you will carry our story to that end." The child looked up, frightened. "And if I refuse?" Selene's pale hand brushed his cheek. "Then the world will burn again, and not even your gods will save it." Above them, lightning tore through the red sky, the mark of the next war, and the beginning of the end for the House of Crimson. The keep stood silent after the war. Its once living walls, carved from the bones of ancient beasts, now pulsed weakly, as if mourning the dead. The torches no longer burned red, but dull and sickly, mirroring the fading power of the house. The 55 had become 43, and even those who survived had lost pieces of themselves. Some slept in stone, too weak to heal. Others wandered the halls like ghosts. At the heart of it all sat Selene, alone in her throne, her silver crown cracked. The boy with silver eyes stood before her, still untouched by time or battle. "You are not of us," she whispered, "and yet your blood sings louder than ours." The boy looked up, sadness clouding his gaze. "I didn't ask to be born." Selene's eyes softened. "None of us did." Leora watched from the shadows. She had seen enough death to numb the strongest heart, but something inside her still hurt. The boy, half-blood, had been both savior and curse. When he spoke, the keep trembled. When he cried, the sky bled. And yet she felt drawn to him. One night, when Selene slept in her chamber of ash, Leora found him sitting by the window, staring at the dying horizon. "You don't sleep," she said softly. He shook his head. "Dreams don't belong to me." Leora sat beside him. "You ended the war." "No," he replied. "I delayed it." His eyes glimmered faintly. "The world wants balance. I am that balance. But for the world to live, the blood that made it must end." Leora froze. "You mean us?" He nodded slowly. "You." The days grew colder. The keep's walls cracked as if the earth itself rejected what remained of their kind. Selene gathered the surviving vampires and declared, "We will move north to the place where blood first flowed." Her words echoed with power, but her voice trembled. The boy followed silently, his silver eyes never leaving Leora. During their journey through the wasteland, the family began to fracture. Old grudges surfaced. One by one, whispers of rebellion stirred again, not from enemies, but from within. Naira approached Selene in the night. "We cannot keep the boy alive," she hissed. "He will destroy us." Selene looked at her daughter, weary but unyielding. "He is part of our curse," she said. "If we kill him, we kill the truth." Naira's fangs glinted. "Then perhaps the truth should die with us." As they reached the frozen plains, something strange happened. The red sky began to fade into gray, the first color change the world had seen in centuries. The vampires stopped, staring upward in disbelief. Leora felt warmth on her face, faint, fragile, but real. "What is this?" she whispered. The boy stepped forward, closing his eyes. "Morning." The word felt foreign to them. The vampires hissed as the pale light touched their skin. Some screamed, some fell. Selene shielded her face, glaring at the boy. "What have you done?" He opened his eyes, silver glowing brighter than ever. "I didn't do this," he said. "You did the moment you chose to survive." The light spread faster, burning through the mist. For the first time since the world fell, the sun rose. It was weak and trembling, but alive. And with it came a truth none of them could escape. The end was near, and it looked like dawn. Leora stood between the boy and her mother, her heart breaking. "There has to be another way," she cried. "There is," the boy said softly. "But it costs everything." Selene's shadow grew behind her, wings unfurling, her power surging with desperation. "No," she screamed. "The House of Crimson will not end like this." The boy raised his hand, and the sunlight bent around him. Then you will end as you began with blood. Leora threw herself forward, standing between them. Stop, she shouted. If you destroy each other, there will be nothing left. Her voice cracked, but the light froze midair. The boy looked at her, tears forming in his silver eyes. You are not like them, he whispered. You are both dawn and dusk. Celine stared at her daughter, and for the first time in 1,000 years, she saw something that scared her. Hope. The sun rose higher than it had in 10,000 years. Its pale light stretched across the frozen plains, touching the ruins of the old world. The snow turned red where it met the earth, as though the blood of ages slept beneath it. The House of Crimson stood in silence, their faces turned to the dawn they had once feared. Their power faded with every heartbeat, their shadows shrinking to nothing. Celine stood at the front, her black cloak torn, her crown shattered. So this is how the world ends, she whispered, her voice breaking. Leora stood beside her, holding the boy's trembling hand. His silver eyes dimmed. Not ends, he said softly. Begins again. Around them, the surviving vampires knelt, their ancient bodies trembling as warmth kissed their skin for the first time. The sun was gentle, but its touch carried truth. The world was no longer theirs. Celine turned to the boy. You said balance, she said weakly. Tell me, what does that mean now? He looked at her, sadness deep as eternity in his eyes. It means you must die so that something new can live. Her lips trembled. You would kill your own blood? He shook his head. Not kill. Free. He stepped closer, placing a small, glowing hand against her chest. The light spread through her like fire and water all at once. Her long dead heart began to beat once, twice, and then it stopped. Celine gasped, looking at her hands. They were fading into light. So this is peace, she whispered, smiling for the first time in centuries. Her body dissolved, her form scattering like red petals on the wind. The Queen of Shadows was gone. The others watched in awe. One by one, the vampires rose and walked into the dawn. Some smiled. Some wept. Some simply vanished. They did not burn, nor scream, nor crumble. They became the light. Naira knelt beside her mother's crown and whispered, For all our sins, may the world forgive. Then she lifted her face to the sun and closed her eyes, disappearing into dust. Around her, the keep crumbled, the stones turning to ash and rising toward the heavens. Leora stood still, the last of them who remained flesh. The boy turned to her, his light flickering weakly. You must choose, he said. Stay and live as the last of your kind, or rise and end the line forever. Tears streamed down her cheeks. If I live, she said, they will be forgotten. The boy nodded. If you die, they will be remembered. She looked up at the burning sky. The red had gone, replaced by the first true blue since the fall. They deserve to be remembered, she whispered. The boy smiled faintly. Then remember them. He reached out his hand, light flowing between his fingers. Leora took it. Pain shot through her body, cold, pure, and infinite. Her fangs turned to mist, her crimson eyes to silver. Will it hurt? She asked softly. The boy shook his head. Only for a moment. As the light swallowed her, she saw visions of her mother, her sisters, her father, and all 55 standing beneath a younger sky. They were laughing. They were free. When the light faded, only the wind remained. The House of Crimson had ended, and in its place the world breathed again. Centuries later, a small child found a silver rose growing in the ruins where the keep once stood. No one remembered the vampires anymore, only the stories. They said the sky had once burned red, that blood ruled the world, and that one girl had chosen the dawn over darkness. The child plucked the rose and watched as its petals glowed faintly in the sunlight. In that moment, a whisper drifted through the air, soft, distant, eternal. We are not gone, it said. We are the blood that became the light. The child smiled without knowing why. The sun shone warm above the silent ruins, and somewhere deep in the earth, 55 hearts finally rested. The curse had ended. The world had begun again.